words of my mouth and the meditation of each and every one of our hearts here today will please God, who is our everlasting rock and our eternal Redeemer. As Ken pointed out in his prayer this week, we are going to celebrate the arrival of 2009. And as we prepare to celebrate this end of 2008 and the beginning of 2009, I'm going to make some suggestions. I know that many of us will take time to reflect upon the past year. New Year's is a natural time of reflection, but I would encourage us to reflect not only on the physical aspects of 2008, the mental, financial, and emotional aspects, the events that have happened, not only on what we have done or how we have acted, but also I want to encourage us to reflect spiritually on 2008. The Christian walk in some ways is kind of like a new year. We can say to ourselves, the old is gone and the new has come. And indeed, as a Christian, this is exactly true. And it's what Christ is saying in Revelation. Revelation can be an intimidating book. I know that many people are afraid of reading it. It gives us insight into how God will end the world. It shows the universe being swallowed up and replaced by a new one. Many people are intimidated to read Revelation because they're afraid of what they might learn as they read it. They're afraid of thinking about the end of the world. My sister had 3 VHS cassettes on the life and ministry of Jesus. They were entitled The Early Years, or the Early Ministry, the Middle Ministry, and the End Days. And for 2 years, that third VHS cassette sat on her shelf, unwatched, because she was afraid of what she might see and learn by watching that third cassette. Finally, after 2 years of seeing it sit there and collect dust, she said, I've had this for this long, I should watch it and see what I learn. And so she put it in, and when the film began to roll and she was watching, she was very embarrassed to learn that the end times, or the last days that the cassette was talking about, was Christ's crucifixion, His death, and His resurrection. Had nothing to do with Revelation. But in her own fear and misunderstanding, she had avoided it for 2 years and allowed this to sit on her conscience and sit in the back of her mind and simmer there, saying, I know I've got it there, but I'm afraid to learn what's going to happen and what Revelation teaches us. Revelation does portray the end of the world, and for non-Christians, this is, and rightfully should be, a scary prospect. But for Christians, this should hold a message of hope. Revelation portrays the end of this world, that is true, but it also portrays the beginning of the next world. Revelation 21, which Ken read the very beginning for you, portrays the end of the end and the beginning of the new beginning. God has finished destroying the world, and now He is recreating it. The end of the end is a new beginning. That's why Revelation is a book filled, for Christians, filled with hope and expectation. Now John is on an island. He's on the island of Patmos when Christ comes to him and gives him this vision. And it's the entire book of Revelation. He sees a vision of Christ, and Christ speaks to him, and Christ opens up heaven's doors and says, this is what's going to happen. When we get to 21, this is the new creation. And John describes in chapters 21 and 22 what he sees in the new creation. We're going to look just at the very beginning of Revelation 21. You can read along with me on the overhead. Revelation 21:1 says this, Then I, John, saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, now this is Jesus speaking, See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them, They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more. For the first things have passed away. And the one who was seated on the throne said, See, I, Jesus, am making all things new. Also he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. Jesus is seated on the throne next to the Father. And he says, see, John, look, I am making all things new. When Jesus completes his work of making everything new, that place will be called the New Jerusalem. In that place, he describes here, there will be no more crying, no more death, no more mourning, no more pain. This place is the place that we call heaven. Does that sound scary to you? Why are so many Christians scared, afraid to read this book and to study what's inside? One reason might be that we're too caught up with our lives here in this world. We love our lives so much here, we don't want to think about losing them or going to heaven. We may have gotten too comfortable here in our pews, in our homes. Jesus is making a new world for us. It is a better world by far. And for Christians, this is good news. This good news is every bit as much good news as Jesus dying on the cross for us, because Jesus' death on the cross is what purchases our passage into this new world. Jesus says, I am making all things new. Jesus in Revelation is speaking in the present tense, but he's in a vision. So some people will argue that Jesus says this in the present tense, but he means the future, meaning Jesus will make all things new. But I think that Jesus has been and will continue to make all things new. I think that it's a past, present, and future work. His work began, in my opinion, at the cross. When he died on the cross, he died so that he could begin his work of making all things new through the lives of his followers. He's making all things new, starting with you, with me. Jesus has started his work of making all things new by making Christians new. He will complete his work by making the entire universe new. So his new people will have a new home. When we believe that the Bible teaches us about God, and when we promise to live our lives according to his teaching, then he does something amazing. He makes us new. Do you ever see that new car in a bottle stuff that you can buy and spray in your car and make it smell like a new car? Have you seen that stuff? It's kind of like that, but much better. Because it's not putting a thin veneer over something that's old and dirty. He's actually converting it from something old and dirty into something new. It's almost like the spray. It's a cartoon, and you spray it all over, and what happens is as the dust, or as the vapor settles, a new car appears out of the vapor. You see, Christ cleans our lives. He washes us inside and out. He vacuums even under the floor mats and in the trunk. He washes our car. He cleans our carburetor. Now I'm getting into an area that I don't know tons about. So if I say something wrong, please understand that I'm trying to use it as an illustration and fix it in your head. Okay? Make it work in your head. He takes our carburetors apart. He cleans them out and he puts them back together. He puts that fuel injector cleaner in our gas tank, which cleans out our fuel injectors. Now see, I know that the carburetor and the fuel injector are not on the same car, is that right? You gotta have one or the other. See, I knew you were paying attention now. You're like, I'm gonna catch that guy making a mistake, and I'm gonna tell him on the way out. Shame on you. He puts a new air filter so that our engines run